All right, let's open up a new case file today. This one's a real high-rise showdown. It's a story that kicks off with a weird noise from an air conditioner, but you'll see it quickly spirals into a huge fight between one person in a New York City apartment and the massive company that owns the building. This is the case of Apartment 37F.
So first up, let's meet the players. In one corner, you've got the tenant, a guy we're going to call Detective Allen for a case file. And in the other corner, his landlord, Brookfield, which isn't just a landlord, it's a giant global company. You can see right away, this is a classic David and Goliath story. Just a massive, staggering difference in size and power. And to really get a sense of that size, just look at this number, $178 billion. According to Brookfield itself, that's how much money they have just sitting there, ready to use. We're talking about a true financial juggernaut. This number really sets the stage, you know? It shows you the immense power we're dealing with here. Okay, so every good investigation starts with a clue, right? Something that just doesn't feel right. So let's dig into the first piece of evidence in our file, the actual physical problem that got this whole thing started.
It all started when Detective Allen noticed something really weird with the AC units in his apartment. I mean, they weren't just broken, they were acting erratically, doing things that made no sense. And as he was about to find out, things that were actually pretty dangerous.
So he starts digging, and here's the first thing he finds. Even when the AC units were switched completely off, they were blasting out hot air at over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So instead of, cooling his apartment, they were acting like these powerful, unstoppable heaters running 24/7.
But the heat, that was just a symptom of a much bigger, scarier problem. The real danger was electrical. A technician came in and measured one of the units constantly pulling 9 amps of power while it was off. To give you some perspective, that's more electricity than a lot of appliances use when they're running full blast. A constant 9-amp draw means something is seriously wrong. It's the kind of thing that can easily spark a fire.
And his fears were confirmed by an independent expert report. I mean, this quote says it all. This wasn't just a maintenance problem. The report found, quote, critical electrical faults that pose a considerable safety risk, including the potential for fire. All of a sudden, a broken AC unit turns into a documented life-threatening hazard.
And this is so important, because these conditions seem to be a direct violation of a huge piece of New York tenant law, the warranty of habitability. This isn't just a suggestion, it's the law. A landlord must provide a home that's safe to live in. And a documented fire risk, well, that pretty much puts that promise in serious doubt.
So, the case started with a safety issue, but it quickly turned into a big financial fight. Let's move to the next file, because as the tenant was trying to get things fixed, a whole new dispute opened up about the rent itself.
This timeline is absolutely key to the whole money issue. The last legally binding, signed by everyone lease ran out in November 2023. Now, the landlord sent a new lease offer a bit later, but, and you gotta pay attention here, they never actually signed it themselves. This basically created a contractual black hole, which the landlord decided to fill on their own terms.
And here are those terms. With no new valid contract in place, the landlord just started charging a new rent of over $9,000. That is an increase of more than $2,000 every single month, slapped on without a signed agreement from both sides.
So this sudden price jump is what the tenant's overcharge claim is all about. The case file shows he did the math, and the difference between what he should have been paying and the new imposed rent added up to almost $27,000.
Okay, so what happens when you have a tenant pointing out a dangerous safety hazard and challenging a massive rent increase? Well, according to the case file, the landlord's response got pretty aggressive.
The file lays out a series of what are alleged to be retaliatory actions. First, there's an incident where the tenant's private bank statements were apparently taken and held by management. Then just a few weeks after that, boom, a 90-day eviction notice. And to top it off, his access to all the building's amenities, the gym, the lounge, you name it, was suddenly cut off. Now, this is a huge piece of the legal puzzle. New York State has a law specifically to protect people from this sort of thing. It's called retaliatory eviction. It basically makes it illegal for a landlord to kick you out just because you made a legitimate complaint about a safety violation, like a fire hazard. This law is like a legal shield for the tenant, and it could make that whole eviction notice totally invalid. And all of this brings us to the biggest question hanging over this entire case. Why? Why would a multi-billion-dollar company get into this kind of messy, high-stakes fight with one tenant over a couple of broken ACs? Right? It seems like the simplest thing in the world. Tenant says there's a dangerous problem, landlord fixes it, everybody moves on.
But Detective Allen's investigation uncovered what he claims is a massive financial motive for the landlord to fight rather than fix the problem. And here you have it, straight from the tenant's own case notes. He puts forward this theory that his apartment isn't just a one-off. He alleges that this faulty wiring is a huge, building-wide problem, and that the incredible cost to fix it all is the real reason for the landlord's behavior. Now, an outside analysis that's in the case file seems to back up this high-cost theory. It estimated that to properly and safely replace just one of these messed-up units, we're talking wiring, labor, the whole shebang, could cost over $9,000 for a single apartment.
And here it is, the number that might just explain everything. If you take that per unit cost and you multiply it by every apartment in that huge building, the potential price tag for fixing everything comes to a jaw-dropping $25 million.
And once you see that number, the landlord's alleged strategy suddenly clicks into focus. A potential $25 million liability, that is a powerful reason to want to avoid fixing this at all costs. From that point of view, fighting one tenant, even if it gets expensive, is way cheaper than admitting to a systemic building-wide disaster.
And that's where the case file closes, at least for now. It leaves us with this really fundamental question. What happens when one person, armed with stacks of documents and a solid understanding of the law, uncovers a problem that could cost a corporate giant millions? It's a real test of whether one person's evidence can actually stand up against a corporation's bottomless resources. The answer could have a huge impact, far beyond just Apartment 37F.